Good morning, everyone. We're going to give everyone just another minute to join us. We're expecting about 100 people on the call today, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Liza Fleming-Ives. I'm the Executive Director of the Genesis Fund and the Chair of the MAHC Board, and thank you for joining us this morning. Welcome to our membership meeting. Just as a reminder, I know many of you have joined us before, but we're on Zoom in the webinar mode, so all participants are muted, and if you're joining us from your computer, your video is turned off. We're not using the chat feature today, but if you do have questions through the meeting, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A feature on the Zoom screen on the bottom of your computer screen, and we are recording this meeting today. Most of you will have seen the announcement about MAHC staff transition, and we are going to talk about that transition today, but we're going to go ahead and get started this morning with an update on what's happening in Washington at the federal level with proposals involving housing resources, because our guest needs to leave to get on another Zoom. So we're so pleased to welcome back Bob Moss, who has joined us many times before on Zoom in the last year and a half to share updates on federal housing policy issues. And Bob is a partner with MG Housing Strategies and is going to walk us through some key affordable housing proposals, including the plan that the Biden administration just announced yesterday to build and preserve affordable homes, as well as housing elements of the human infrastructure legislation that's been proposed by Democrats in Congress. So Bob, welcome, thank you. We know you have a very busy morning, so we really appreciate your making time to join us today.
Thank you, Liza. Good morning, everybody. I hope you had a good night's sleep with the rain last night. We have been working on this legislation that I'm going to talk about first, especially the production provisions with Senate Finance Chairman Ron Wyden since January. The Decent, Affordable, Safe Housing Act for All, or the DASH Act, is a sweeping reform of how our nation houses people experiencing homelessness, and it addresses the crisis of housing affordability. I'm going to walk through the greatest hits of this 42-page document in the time that we have, and I would also be happy to answer any questions should you want to email me afterwards or put it in the Q&A. Title I of the legislation extends a housing choice voucher to all families or individuals experiencing homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness. It also institutes important reforms to local zoning and housing development to get America building affordable housing again. Title II of the DASH Act implements innovative and impactful tax policy to more wisely invest in home ownership, rent support for low-income families, and construction and production of affordable housing nationwide. Title I of the bill, the highlights are an expansion of the Housing Trust Fund. It provides $10 billion for the next 10 years to states to acquire, develop, or rehabilitate affordable housing. There's also a modular construction pilot program. The DASH Act authorizes $10 million over 5 years for a pilot program to invest in innovative, cost-effective building methods. It also supports pro-housing development under the DASH Act. Any jurisdiction that changes its zoning or land use practices after the enactment of the legislation will become eligible for a grant award, depending on the size of the jurisdiction. And those funds will be used for any approved activity as determined by the CDBG block grant program. So this is a very, very significant provision. That under rural housing, the DASH Act invests in programs to increase and preserve the supply of rural housing, includes expansion of the 504 Rural Housing Assistance Program the Section 514 Farm Labor Program, the Section 515 Rural Development Program, and the Section 516 program, which is Labor Housing Grant. You'll be happy to hear it expands the low-income housing tax credit as well. The key provisions in that portion of the bill would expand the 9% credit by 50% over 2 years. It also provides a 50% basis boost to projects that prioritize extremely low income renters. It expands the 4% credit for rural areas and reduces the tax-exempt bond financing threshold for 4% credit projects from 50% to 25%. It includes rural areas as difficult to develop areas, and it increases the credit for bond finance projects by giving a basis boost designated by the state agency of up to 30% for 4% deals. It prohibits, it removes the requirement for state housing agencies to notify local or elected officials about the location of a proposed building. And it provides a basis boost of 50% for low-income housing properties that have supportive services. This is the intersection between healthcare and housing. So qualified supportive services include mental health services, job training, financial counseling, resident engagement, or services aimed at helping tenants retain permanent housing and promote economic self-sufficiency. To keep on going, there's a renter's tax credit as well. This renter's tax credit establishes a refundable credit claimable by taxpayers who own or operate affordable housing. And there's also a brand new middle income housing tax credit, MyTech, a new middle income credit. It's $1 per capita, and MyTech may be used in combination with LIHTC. And MyTech is, the goal is to serve between 60 and 100% of area median incomes. There's also the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, which steers monies and incentives towards redoing neighborhoods, fixing up old neighborhoods and substantially rehabilitating residences as part of a larger housing project. So, you know, there's more. All I can tell you is I know the questions are, well, how is this going to get done? Well, the wheels are turning now that last week, Speaker Pelosi pulled off what days before seemed unimaginable. She had 9 moderates who wanted to hold off on infrastructure and move on to the bigger $3.5 trillion social infrastructure package when they return. But she managed to get a 220 to 212 vote to pass a rule setting September 27th as the date at which they will move on the infrastructure bill that was passed in the Senate. So this now allows the House Democrats to focus on reconciliation in sync with the Senate. The Ways and Means Committee right now is looking at what amounts the increased corporate tax rate and other issues will raise, the revenue raisers or pay-fors. And as you all know, that legislation, tax legislation, has to start in the Ways and Means Committee. So they're building the boat, which will determine the ultimate size of what has been reported as 3.5 trillion. It could be 4 trillion, it could be 3 trillion by the time they're done. And then meanwhile, while they're doing that, the Joint Committee on Tax is scoring the legislation I just mentioned to you as fast as it can. The scores for each piece will be determined by how long those provisions will be in place and if it meets the Byrd Rule. The Byrd Rule says that they can't be regulatory. They have to be issues that actually score. They have to have a score to them. So as an example, the 9% increase in the DASH Act may not be 50% over 2 years. It may be 15% for 3 years or something like that. And then yesterday, as you mentioned, Liza, the White House made several other regulatory changes, including expanding the low-income housing tax credit duty to serve annual investment amounts from $500 million to $850 million each for Fannie and Freddie, which is a huge supply of equity and will be very good for Maine. They also included the resumption of the partnership between the Treasury Department's federal financing bank in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's a risk-sharing program that was terminated under the previous administration. That program delivers low-cost financing through state housing finance agencies. And I got an email back from Mr. Brennan yesterday. They have not utilized that to date, but I know several other smaller New England states are using that as well. So there's a lot on the plate. And as we're speaking right now and waiting for Congress to get back, what we thought would maybe be year-end action could be by Halloween. We could have the infrastructure bill passed. We could have everything done. We could have this reconciliation bill, which, as you know, will be a 50-vote Democratic-only bill. But Ways and Means is building the boat. Joint Committee on Taxes scoring the legislation to see how those pieces all fit together. And we'll know within 60 days, hopefully, what that looks like.
Great, thanks, Bob. I'm going to have Greg, maybe you can join us for a few questions. We have a little bit of time with Bob still, and I saw that folks are interested in some of the details of the DASH Act. So I think we will be able to share that summary with everyone. I think, Greg, you may have included that already, but we'll make sure to get a link or get a summary out to folks as well.
I did that a lot faster than I thought I would.
Yeah, I thank you, Bob. You know, I did include a kind of I think a 1 or 2 page summary, as well as a more extensive summary of the DASH Act in the original invitation or maybe in the reminder invitation for this meeting. But we can send that around again, along with a link to the actual bill for those who like wading through, I think Bob said, was it 42 pages of text?
Yeah, that's the legislative text version. The actual version will be probably 300 pages, but this is a good summary, the section by section summary.
Right. And I think, so we'll send that out again. And I think, Bob, one of the things, like, as you said, you know, people are curious about timeline. Sounds like you were saying it could be a little quicker than originally thought. I guess it depends on a lot of politics. But I think one of the things that folks really are curious about too is, you know, are we in a position to help? You know, obviously decisions are being made at a certain high level here. They're now being sent into individual committees to do the hard work of scoping out individual provisions. Do we have members of our delegation on, you know, any of those committees, such that any of the, you know, folks on this call or in the membership might be able to weigh in and have some kind of impact?
Our entire delegation supports this legislation. The original portion of this DASH Act was the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, and both all four have been on board co-sponsoring. But it's always helpful to reach out to them and thank them and recognize that they did support it. They were all on board within days of the initial launch of the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. They've been on that bill in various versions, all four of them, over 4 or 5 years now as it's evolved. As you know, we got the 4% fix at the end of last year. So they've been great. And, you know, sometimes that's a great message to send. It's just thank you for doing what you're doing. And you know, this bill will, because it's operating in reconciliation, will operate outside of Senator Collins. She won't be participating in this, but she still has supported everything else Senator King has, and Representative Golden and Pingree have as well. So a little thank you note is probably very, very helpful, because if some of these provisions are short-term, like 2 or 3 years, we're going to have to fight again, and we're going to need them.
Great. And you know, just sort of big picture, do you think it's fair to say this is the most expansive and game-changing piece of housing legislation we've seen in generations?
It is. This is great society type level housing. We've never seen anything like this. We may never see anything like this again. It's pretty significant. It's very exciting. And now that the sausage machine has stopped and they're starting to actually legislate and vote, it's looking good at this point in time.
Great. And last question, I'll throw at you, Bob. You were talking about the White House announcement yesterday and the things that they're trying to accomplish even before this bill gets dealt with in terms of creating more housing. One of those was, I think, as you may have alluded to, that Fannie and Freddie's limits on investment in the low-income housing tax credit program have been increased. I guess any feedback you have about what that might mean for Maine practitioners? Do you see any impact on pricing or anything like that?
Well, the market lacks diversity to begin with. And so this expands the diversity in the equity markets. We'll have to see how the pricing works out on that front. One of the priorities within the expansion of Fannie and Freddie's footprint and equity expansion is a requirement to serve rural areas. So that's a great feature for us.
Great. Yeah, maybe I'll let Bob off the hook now without more questions.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Yes, too. Yes. Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us, Bob. We know you're headed to another call, so appreciate your sharing this update this morning, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes, thank you very much. Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bob.
Great. I wanted to share with folks now, when Greg shared with the MAHC board that he would be leaving his position, the board decided that after 15 years of steady staff leadership, that it would be good to take some time to consider the best structure and staff solution for MAHC's future. And so we've decided to hire an interim coordinator to help us track MAHC's policy priorities and to share updates with all of you, the membership, while the board plans and conducts the search for permanent staffing. And I'm really pleased to share that after talking with several candidates, the MAHC board has contracted with Jeff Levine to serve in this role for the next 4 months. And Jeff, as many of you may know, is the former Director of Planning and Urban Development for the City of Portland. And he's been a consultant over the last couple of years to a number of Maine communities, working on affordable housing assessments, and is currently on the faculty of MIT. And separate from his role in assisting MAHC through our staff transition this fall, Jeff is also and will be serving as a member of the Land Use and Zoning Commission, which folks will recall was a major priority of MAHC's to put in place in the last legislative session. So we're so grateful to have Jeff joining us in the interim staff role, and also Jeff was available to join us this morning for this call, just to share briefly an update about the Commission's work, which I think folks will be interested in hearing as the Commission has already started to meet. So Jeff, thanks for joining us, and I'll let you say a few words about the Commission.
Sure. So after a lot of wrangling, the technical name of the commission is the Commission to Increase Housing Opportunities in Maine by Studying Zoning and Land Use Restrictions. I think that it's generally going to be called the Commission to Increase Housing Opportunities in Maine. They have a website now, which actually maybe I'll put in the chat after I'm done talking. It's pretty basic, but I think they're trying to build it out. It has a list of the 15 members, the staff from OPLA, which was a new acronym for me. I wasn't aware of OPLA. As a part of state government. And so the first meeting was on August 12th, and that was really mostly an organizational meeting, just getting to know the members, hearing some comments from the public, developing kind of a work plan. The next meeting is September 9th, and it's going to be a hybrid, so you can Zoom into it, or you can go up to room 228. And the last meeting was also hybrid, and they did a great job given how hard it is to do a hybrid meeting. But they're going to continue doing the hybrid format for people to make it more accessible. The next meeting, they're trying to focus on the issue of zoning and the sort of racial disparities that it's made worse over time with some data and hopefully a presentation from someone who is an expert in the field. Then the next meeting, I believe, is actually the week after that. It looks like they're going to be meeting almost every other week, at least, if not every week, on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Sorry, at 1 p.m. In room 228, because the authorization is only for 6 meetings, and we're supposed to come up with a set of recommendations by, I want to say, early November. It's a pretty tight time frame, which is a blessing and a curse. It's nice to have a set time frame to get stuff done, but I am a little worried about how quick it is. So one of the things that I've started doing is creating what I call a spitball list of ideas, because I think the commission is going to really quickly need to start having very concrete proposals discussed. So if people have ideas for me, let me know, and I can add them to my spitball list. It's going to be way too long to really recommend all of these actions, but hopefully we can hone it down to 2 or 3, or maybe a few more really quick actionable items that can go before the legislature as soon as possible. In terms of the dynamic, I think the biggest challenge is going to be the concern about home rule. I mean, let's just get real about it. You know, like many states that have home rule, Maine thinks it has extremely strong home rule, and it does generally, but there are limits to it already in state law. And, you know, I think the question is, how do we convince the legislature and hopefully communities that there should be a framework about housing goals and about housing production in the state, and that part of how you preserve Maine's character is by producing more housing for people who live in Maine, not by sort of avoiding that and backing into a housing policy through other means. So that's kind of what I'm going to try to focus on. Technically, I'm on it as the representative of planning and smart growth organizations, but as you know, I'm very interested in housing work, and I'm hoping that that we can try to get some good recommendations, and that hopefully Maine Municipal won't fight them tooth and nail. I'm optimistic that they'll get on board with some ideas. And the question is, what are the ideas that they can support or at least not oppose, and that we can get something done out of this commission.
Great. Jeff, thank you. And if folks want to be able to follow those meetings, either attend or in person or remotely, the schedule is available on that website that you mentioned?
It's not. They are posting the meetings as they set them.
Okay.
I can give you the dates of the next few meetings tentatively. September 9th, I want to say September 16th, September 30th, and then I believe the following Thursday. But this is all subject to change, so just keep an eye on the website.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for that update. So Jeff will be tracking both sort of state priorities for us and also federal priorities, like the legislation that Bob was just talking about, and sharing periodic updates through the fall with the MAHC membership. And he just invited you to offer suggestions to him. And so for his work with MAHC, we're setting up an email address for Jeff, which I think is going to be jlevine@mainehousingcoalition.org. So that's in the works, but that would be a way to reach Jeff over the next few months.
Great,
So,
and I'm really excited to work with MAHC. This is great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. No, we're thrilled that this is going to work out, and thanks again for joining us today.
Right.
So the board is also going to work with a facilitator through this transition. And one of the things we will do is formally seek feedback from MAHC members as we plan for the permanent hire. But if you would like to share input or have questions in the meantime, you can reach out to the board through Amy Cullen, who is actually the incoming chair of the board. And Amy's contact information is on the board list that Greg sent out with the materials for today's meeting. She is at the Stanton Company. And so, Greg, I'll have you join us again. I just wanted to turn it back over to you. We were so sorry to hear that Greg was going to be leaving his position, but he's headed to an exciting new opportunity. And we know that you're not going to be very far away. But I wanted to give you just a few moments to share with folks the new role that you're going to be in.
Yes, I'll do that. Some of you may know that, when the governor was giving her inaugural address back in 2019, she announced she was going to create an Office of Innovation and the Future. And that ultimately resulted in the formation of the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future, which is also known by its acronym of GOPIF, with a mission to foster collaboration across state government to help address some of the state's most important challenges using data-driven and innovative policy solutions. GOPIF staff have been working on a number of really big issues, including climate and energy and the opioid response and children's issues and workforce development. I think as our housing problems in Maine have gotten worse and worse over time, existing staff at GOPIF have been, kind of veering off of some of what they have to do with some of their time to address those issues, which has been great. There's been an incredible and helpful dialogue with the governor's staff over the last couple of years addressing housing problems and specifically rent relief and eviction issues and lots of sub-issues within housing. But I think there was enough of that going on that the governor and the GOPIF staff kind of said, we really need to have somebody here who's focusing on housing full time. And that's what this job is. I will be a housing advisor to the governor within GOPIF. The specific day-to-day parameters of my job, I think is something that is going to be worked out over the coming weeks with my soon-to-be colleagues. But my assumption is that it'll include both, some of the direct issues that we've been talking about for a while, like ARPA funds and, this infrastructure money and new policies that Bob was just talking with us about, which are just kind of incredible and present incredible opportunities for Maine to address our housing problems. But I think in addition to those kind of sort of bread and butter housing issues, it's going to also kind of bleed into other sectors, as some might expect, like climate and building housing in a way that reflects our climate challenges and climate goals. It'll bleed into workforce issues, because as we all know, the construction workforce problems we're having right now are having a huge impact on our ability to deliver housing in a timely way now. What those are going to be if our pipeline expands, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times in the coming years is something we really have to work through. But I think there's going to be a range of issues that I'll be working on. I'll say I suspect it's going to take a little time for me to get situated, for me to understand exactly how my role is going to work and to get my feet wet in this new job. But I do hope that folks will stay in touch. My new email address at that new role, effective as of Tuesday, is greg.payne@maine.gov. And, I guess on that point, and the last thing I'll say for now is that I am counting on hearing from you and continuing the partnership that we have been working on together for so long now. I think, as folks know, I'm a huge believer in the importance of advocacy voices outside of government, pushing government to do the best it can with the opportunities in front of us. And that doesn't change just because I will now be part of government. And so I look forward to working with all of you in that role. Obviously, this is strange and a little surreal after all these years to be leaving MAHC, but there is such incredible opportunity ahead to make progress. And I really do look forward to working with you all in a different capacity going forward.
Thanks, Greg. And we will probably be having you back on these calls in the future too. So
that would be great.
We look forward to continued work together. We're gonna say a few more things about our appreciation for Greg just toward the end of the meeting today. But one of the things that we need to do is actually accomplish 3 items of MAHC business that the membership will vote on. So I want to invite MAHC board members to turn on their video now. Amy Cullen and Bill Shanahan and Janice DeLima and Jason Bird are going to join us. And the first item of business today is actually to approve a new slate of officers for MAHC. So I am at the end of serving as the board chair over the last 2 years, and we have a new slate to present to you today. And that includes Amy Cullen as the new chair of MAHC, and Jason Bird as the vice chair, and Bill Shanahan as treasurer, and Janice DeLima as secretary. And this year, all board members are continuing to remain on the board, and there are no new board members this year that we're presenting. So Greg has shared the list of the full board again in the meeting materials, but I'm going to run a Zoom poll at this time to get folks on the call to please go ahead and vote for this new slate of officers that that we are presenting to you today. So I'm going to launch the poll, and if you would just take a minute and vote for us, that would be great. I see lots of responses coming in, so we'll just give it a minute more to get final responses, and then I'll share this. All right, I'm going to close the poll. And that was a unanimous vote approving the new slate of officers. So thank you very much for that. Next, I'm gonna have Amy and Jason share MAHC's policy priorities. And Amy, why don't you go ahead first with the state priorities?
Good morning, everybody. At our retreat this year, after hearing about Greg's departure, we did have time to talk about our state and federal priorities. And here they are for the year. For the state priorities, we have support the allocation and effective deployment of key housing resources, support reforms to the land use and zoning laws, improve the quality of Maine's housing stock, support programs and services that promote housing stability, and to actively collaborate with Maine Housing and other state agencies to create efficiencies.
Great, thanks, Amy. And Jason, will you share the federal priorities?
Sure. For the 21-22 year, we have 3 overarching policy goals at the federal level. The first of which is advocating for new housing infrastructure resources. The second being increased rental assistance resources and protecting low-income renters. And the third would be to preserve federally assisted housing stock.
Great, thank you. So we'll go ahead and launch a poll to approve these priorities, both the federal and the state priorities. And I'll go ahead and launch that poll right now and give folks a minute to respond. And just a few more seconds to get in your vote. Great. And again, a unanimous vote of approval. Thank you. And then the third item of business is MAHC's budget. And Bill Shanahan, as our treasurer, is going to present that to you. Bill, you may be muted if you're speaking.
Sorry. Good morning, folks. This is a very stripped down, straightforward budget proposal. We have one revenue line for dues. There are no other revenue lines related to conference income or even research or grant income currently. All the expenses are consistent with what we've had expended in the past. Couple of obvious line items that haven't been budgeted are the line for lobbyists and any expense around conference. And we are proposing basically a revenue budget of revenues of $97,000 and expenses of $27,131. Our expenses include funding a reserve at a fairly consistent level of $5,000 a year. Our reserve budget is now currently at $20,015. Our revenues, excess revenues would be revenues over expenses proposed in this budget would be $27,131, I guess. So this is a very, again, straightforward budget. We obviously are in a state of flux. This may change. There's events and circumstances that may dictate us coming back to the membership for changes as the year unfolds. But this is currently what we're proposing.
Great, thanks, Bill. And so finally, I'll go ahead and launch the third poll, which would be the vote on the budget that the board is presenting. And just take a little bit more time to get final votes in. All right, and I'll close that poll. And again, unanimous support for that budget as what was presented. So thank you everyone for that. And so now I want to turn it over to Janice. We just wanted to say a few words before closing this meeting, because this is the last that Greg will be with us in his current role as director of MAHC. And so we just wanted to acknowledge all of his years of service to the organization. And Janice, why don't you begin?
Thank you, Liza, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of the board and the MAHC, the membership of MAHC, I want to express our gratitude and our appreciation of your leadership, Greg, and our heartfelt congratulations on your new role. If any of you caught Tuesday's Maine Calling program on NPR, you would have heard the Maine journalist that Jen Rook was hosting commending the governor's choice of Greg as her senior advisor on housing policy. And in their words, if anyone needs information about anything related to affordable housing in Maine, Greg Payne is the guy to call. One earns this reputation not because of a title or a role. I believe you've earned it because of your genuine passion and commitment to this subject of housing. It's said when love and skill work together, expect a masterpiece. And that has been our experience with Greg at the helm of MAHC. I have an impressive list here of Greg's advocacy and leadership accomplishments during his 15 years as MAHC's ED, but it strikes me that while his influence is broadly known and unquestioned, I would rather look beyond to his impact on everyday people. Let me start by saying many seniors in Maine have a place to live, thanks to his work on the senior housing bond. Somebody's parents or grandparents or neighbors have a safe and affordable place to live because of Greg's tenacity, not only advocating to get the senior housing bond through the legislature, but then persisting to actually get it released and funded. And we all know what a struggle that was. I can cite the ongoing work of Maine's Zoning and Land Use Commission that we just heard about as another important brushstroke in Greg's masterpiece. This commission may well hold the key to new ways of engaging with the legislature and local municipalities to address this endemic housing shortfall. Greg's understanding of local land use barriers, coupled with his affinity for building networks of like-minded people, be it in the legislature or elsewhere, drove the urgency for the creation of this commission. Municipal leaders, myself included, can be hopeful that through the commission's work, we can mitigate that home rule parochialism and NIMBYism in exchange for something better. In another instance, I recall that an out-of-state syndication group brought a new concept for a housing tax credit program that attracted the increasing attention of Maine's legislatures. As they say, when a window of opportunity appears, Greg is not one to pull down the shades. Instead, he recognized the inherent virtues of this tax credit program as well as the pitfalls. He rallied this group to support a more local version of this same program that kept a lot more money in the projects, paying out a lot less in discounts to syndicators and investors. He never loses sight that every dollar is essential to successfully developing the next affordable project. As a result, an $80 million housing tax credit program over 8 years was enacted and is guaranteed to make the dream of a safe and affordable home become a reality for so many of our neighbors across Maine. But I think we can all agree the high point of his life's work so far occurred about 6 years ago, when Maine finally lowered the threshold for lead poisoning, which would prompt state intervention. And a couple of years later, again, when the state introduced a mandatory blood lead testing in 2019 for all toddlers to ensure prevention of childhood lead poisoning. With these laws in place, we hope that no longer will a young child wonder why they're having difficulty keeping up with their peers in school. With lead testing, parents can know the impact of their home environment, the impact their home environment might be having on their toddler, and be able to make life-altering decisions as a result. These legislative wins were hard fought and came about with Greg's unwavering determination. And as I recall, even after the testing legislation for 1- and 2-year-olds passed, Greg engaged with medical groups to ensure they understood their responsibilities under the requirements. He made it personal, this masterpiece of love and skill. So Greg, we will miss your gentle reminders to keep friends on both sides of the aisle, your relentless pursuit of the end goal no matter the hurdles, and your remarkable grasp of the vast landscape relating to housing while breaking it down into small bite-sized pieces for the rest of us. Since you are an avid baseball fan, I thought I'd close by mixing up a few sportscaster metaphors. So here goes. Greg, you've served up many aces, never left this group out in left field, and you're a slam dunk for the MAHC Hall of Fame. Thank you so much for your many contributions, and we wish you the very best. Thank you, Liza.
Thank you, Janice. So appreciate that. And now the MAHC board actually would like to present an award to Greg. As most of you know, Rick McCarthy served as MAHC's lobbyist for over a decade, helping the coalition navigate a wide range of state legislative and administrative matters. And Rick was an extraordinary advocate for housing, not just because he was so well informed and hardworking, but also because he was universally trusted across party lines. He had a kind and respectful demeanor that, together with his intelligence and strategic thinking, paved the way for his success. And in spring 2020, when Rick McCarthy passed away after battling cancer, MAHC's board of directors announced the creation of the Rickman K. McCarthy Housing Justice Award to be presented to those individuals whose service to the state emulate Rick's compassionate and congenial work undertaken to help ensure that all Mainers have a safe and affordable place to call home. Greg and Rick worked closely together during the decade that Rick served as MAHC's lobbyist. And Greg, like Rick, has a kind and gracious way of conducting his advocacy. He too is well-informed and strategic in his approach, and he has helped to build MAHC's diverse membership to over 135 public and private sector individuals and organizations, and has led numerous successful advocacy campaigns, many that Janice just mentioned. The Green Affordable Housing Bond, the Senior Housing Bond, the state's new Affordable Housing Tax Credit, and of course his work that has also helped to set new lead standards to significantly reduce rates of childhood lead poisoning. These successful campaigns help to ensure that Maine people have access to one of the most fundamental human needs, a safe and affordable home, and thousands of Maine families are better off as a result of this work. So Greg, as a tribute to Rick and in recognition of your 15 years of service to MAHC as our coalition's first director, we would like to present you with the Rickman K. McCarthy Housing Justice Award. And we are enormously grateful for your work on behalf of the coalition over these years. And we know there are many ways that we are going to work with you going forward, but just want to share our gratitude and appreciation for you right now.
Wow. Thank you for that. I'm feeling a little grateful right now. We're not all in a room. This is kind of hard enough before. Yeah, Rick McCarthy was such an important part of our work and taught me so much about how to find success in policy advocacy, which, as you say, involves kindness, I think, with each other and support for each other, and making sure to stay away from partisanship in doing this work. It means so much to me to receive that award. I miss Rick every day, and I'll miss kind of the kind of nearly daily contact with so many of you. So thank you, Janice, too, for your words. I do recognize too, when there's one staff person and that staff person leaves, it involves, a little more work than it might when there's, a full group, including a deputy director or somebody who can step in to figure out how to move forward as an organization. And so I just appreciate the fact, that this board and Liza in particular, thank you for your leadership during this and throughout the years. I've just so enjoyed working with you. I do think, as you've said, housing is extremely personal. I mean, in the end, that's what it is. And, like the lead poisoning work, for example, is in part, a function of my little girl getting poisoned by lead. And, our concern about what that meant for her future, and understanding that a law in the state of Massachusetts probably, radically changed the trajectory of her life, because it allowed us to become aware of it right away and address it. And if we hadn't, we might not be taking her off to UMass Boston on Saturday. That's an example of how housing is personal. Obviously, folks on this call know it well too, but it goes to the heart of our lives and making the best lives we can for ourselves. And so I just appreciate the work with all of you. I think the success we've had in driving housing policy and creating so many new resources to build affordable housing and other policy changes around so many other issues within housing, really is a function of an ability to work together. Even though so many of us are sort of competitors as peers with each other, we have been able to find a way to work together on policy ideas that cross party lines and that are practical and can make a difference in people's lives. And I thank the membership for continuing to do that, for continuing to come together in kind of rowing in the same direction. It is so critical to do that. And I think now going forward, obviously that's going to remain critical. I just think it matters when you have policy leaders, when you have members of Congress or the governor or legislative leaders or agency directors coming in front of, you know, the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition. They see a group that is active and engaged and together and committed, and that matters. I mean, it matters when they go back and decide what they're going to focus on, that folks are organized and working together. So, you know, I just want to say thank you for that and for your trust and for your partnership over all these years. Obviously, again, that continues. You know, at least for me, I'm clearly going to be working with you just in a somewhat different role. With any luck, it'll be in person again before too long, and I look forward to that. But I just want to say thank you. These 15 years with MAHC and of course with Avesta have been extraordinarily, you know, extraordinary and beyond what I ever expected and anticipated when it started. I have loved it and have really loved working with all of you and the progress we've been able to make. So thank you for the award. I will treasure it, and I will treasure, you know, the memories of working together as a group with all of you to make change in people's lives that, again, is so personal and so important. I'll stop there, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I know people will want to be in touch, and I'm sorry we aren't in a room all together to be able to share our appreciation, but just know that I think there's just an enormous round of applause and a standing ovation, Greg, for you, and just, you know, just sharing just great appreciation. So. And we will be in touch, and we look forward to continued work together. And for members, we also will be in touch. We will be continuing through this transition to stay on top of the policy issues that matter to members here, and to be, with Jeff's help, sending out periodic updates and reminders and opportunities to weigh in and have your voices heard over the next few months. And the board will also be keeping in touch about our transition plans and reaching out to you as well on that front. So you will be hearing from us, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And unless, are there any other announcements to be made? Okay, great. I think that's it then. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, and we'll see you soon.